Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, where we discuss the biggest stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang. And, guys, we have ourselves another Victory Monday. Guys, the Canes are advancing to the national championship. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I'm saying it. Defeating the Ole Miss Rebels 31-27 in the Fiesta Bowl. What an incredible game that was. Probably the best game since the Alabama-Oklahoma game. 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter. Great stuff. The stuff legends are made out of. Instant classic. Thought the game couldn't have been better. Miami could have played better, but got a lot of things checked off on my college football bingo card. This was my first road game. I know that sounds crazy being a fan as long as I have, but we have been mediocre for the better part of 2 decades, and I was not ready to commit on taking my disappointment on the road. Just couldn't do it. It was my first game inside of a dome, never been inside of a dome, and it was my first bowl game. So check on the college football bingo card. All amazing. Such a great time. A golf clap for the Ole Miss fans. You guys showed up, showed out. It was a 70-30 split. Maybe if I'm going to be fair to fans, maybe like a 65-35 split. But you guys were loud. You guys were crazy. I don't understand how you memorize all the cheers you guys had, because you guys had a cheer for first down, second down, third down, commercial break, fumble, interception, guy going through the stands to get popcorn. Like it was wild to see how loud, how organized you guys are, how, like I said, you have a cheer for everything. So tip of the cap to you guys. You guys looked and sounded amazing. Now, for the actual football, we will get into it right now. Miami, clearly the most dominant team in that game, asserting its will, holding the ball for over 42 minutes. In just an insane stat. You could tell just in the first 2 drives for both teams how this game was kind of going to go. And if you understood Ole Miss, you kind of figured at some point they would probably do some crazy things to keep themselves in the game, which they did. But when the game kicked off, I mean, when Ole Miss decided to elect to take the ball on offense, I don't know what it is, whether it's my sixth sense, but I immediately felt this wave of confidence come over. I'm like, these guys really think they're going to come in here and beat the brakes off us. They think Trinidad Chambliss is going to be a magician and make something happen. And something told me, I'm like, this first drive is going to tell us a lot about this game. And sure enough, Trinidad Chambliss and the Rebels came out and immediately got a roundhouse kick to the face on that first drive. To the face. I mean, let's talk about this drop kick to the face they got. So, first play, 4-yard pass, doesn't go anywhere. Second play, 2-yard run, doesn't go anywhere. Third play, 13-yard sack. Could you draw anything up better? I couldn't. Besides maybe like the first play being an incomplete pass, the second play being a tackle for a loss, and then the 13-yard sack. But either way, that I at that point I was like, at this point, Ole Miss knew they messed up. Then we get the ball back, and I'm like, okay, boys, here we go. Just got to do what we do. Sure enough, we did. Driving the ball 44 yards, 13 plays, 8 of those 13 plays rushes, and then milking 7.5 minutes off the clock. This was again, a one-sided affair. And Miami somehow, I don't know how they did it. But they were able to defeat 3 opponents in that night. They beat the Rebels, they beat the refs, and they beat themselves, because let me tell you something, Miami made a ton of mistakes. This was an ugly game. It was nowhere near what we looked like against Ohio State. But we came out and we just kept asserting our dominance. I mean, to the point to where I think Ole Miss only had -9 yards by the end of the first quarter. It was just very, very one-sided. But if I'm going to summarize this game really quick, we'll go through some of the stats as we go through different points. But in a summary, this is basically how the game went. You had a heavyweight fighter in Miami who was like Mike Tyson. Then you had a welterweight or middleweight champion who was like, I'm gonna get a few quick blows in there and they're gonna hurt you. And some of them did, but you were definitely not going to knock us out. And so I think between the officiating and the mistakes that Miami made, this would have been a much more lopsided affair. Like, I'm thinking like 42-24. But it just kept allowing Ole Miss to stay in the game, I mean, just to give you an idea, Miami dropped their defense alone, not were in the vicinity of, but dropped 4 interceptions. There were 4 plays where players had the ball in their hand and dropped it. One was just so egregious where there were three players and it looked like they were just playing hopscotch. Like, you want it? You want it. No, I want it. You want it. You want it. It was like the Spider-Man meme, but they were all pointing at each other. Who's going to get the interception? None of them got it. So just imagine between you eliminate the penalties, you eliminate Miami's mistakes, this game would have been a bloodbath. And then, if you don't believe me, Ole Miss only went 2 for 10 on third down. Only held the ball for 18 and a half minutes. The whole game. Not in a half. The whole game. Ole Miss only had the ball for 18 and a half minutes. Miami sucking all the time of possession up in 41 plus minutes. Just dominant, just asserting, just grinding. They just literally just grinded Ole Miss down to a pulp. Lastly, if you go watch this game again, Miami on both sides of the ball kept Ole Miss in this game, whether it was offensive mistakes or defensive mistakes. But at the same time, offensively, Miami on the lines of scrimmage and on the defensive line of scrimmage dominated. Yes, Ole Miss got 4 sacks and a few tackles for losses, but they weren't able to stop the run game. They weren't able to stop the passing game. They couldn't contain Malachi Tony, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then on the defensive side, yes, again, this wasn't a box score game. This was just a very, you got to see with your eyes to see how we got there. But Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor set up residence in the backfield to the point to where there were several plays that Trinidad Chambliss could have easily gotten 20, 30 yards and chose to go to his check down instead. Still converted a few of those, but that the constant aggressive pressure that he was feeling all night, I think it forced him to keep his eyes down as opposed to downfield. I think there was also a few blown assignments, specifically in that Lacey run, that again also kept Ole Miss in this game. But overall, I will say the secondary played lights out. The secondary looked amazing, especially when you're talking about the weapons that Ole Miss has and the quarterback that Trinidad Chambliss is, and he did great. Again, elite players are going to get theirs, but I thought both sides of the ball not clean, but dominant. I know that's there's a little cognitive dissonance when I say that, but that's basically how the game went. I thought Heatherman drew up a perfect game plan for this game. I think in the first 2 games, it was very vanilla in terms of his defensive scheme. He was just like, hey, we're going to line up, we're going to fight you, we're going to dominate you. I think with this game, he, knowing who Trinidad Chambliss was, had to disguise a bunch of looks, especially pre-snap. And it worked out in our favor. A lot of miscues hit on Ole Miss's side of the ball. We're not able to convert, like I said, third downs. A lot of drop passes, lots of inaccurate throws from Trinidad Chambliss, but Miami walking out with the win. There were some questions. How did we get here? That Miami needed to answer to win this game. And that was the first one we talked about, was how much of a factor was Kejuan Lacey going to be? And the answer to that, other than that 72-yard run, didn't do much, right? Kejuan Lacey had 11 runs for 103 yards, but again, you take out that 73-yard rush, that leaves you with about 30 yards on 10 carries. It's not going to do it. And we didn't know in the stadium how bad he had injured himself, or if he had injured himself, but you could tell as you watched the game, there was a decline in production for Lacey. So something was up. And so after that run, that hammy really just, it limited him and their whole running game and period, because he is basically their running attack. So check on the first question, right? The second question, how does Miami slow down that aerial attack? And Miami was able to keep the numbers modest. We weren't, I'm not even going to remotely try and say that we shut them down, that we shut the airways down. But I think overall, when I tell you, Deshaun Stribling only had 75 receptions for 77 yards, Caden Lee had 5 receptions for 67 yards, and Daquan Wright had 3 receptions for 64 yards. That's, again, only 13 passes for their 3 studs. I think that's great. Again, I'm not complaining about that. I thought that was really good. Give it to Ole Miss. Give it up to them, though. Those guys played their hearts out, and in crucial, critical moments where they really needed to move the ball, they did. I know the 2 and 10 third down conversion rate doesn't say so, but there were a lot of first down conversions, and that allowed Ole Miss to move the ball. And I just I don't think you could have stopped it. When you're talking about the talent of Trinidad Chambliss and you're talking about these wide receivers, they were going to get theirs. It was just a matter of could you keep them in a certain sandbox so that they don't doesn't get too out of control. And I think Miami really did that. I think there was a lot of opportunities where, like I said, Ole Miss could have stretched the field and thrown downfield, but the pass rush was so egregious and just so in his face that he wasn't looking downfield. He had to watch the pass rush, and so he checked it down. I think there was a moment in that fourth quarter, obviously, with the four different lead changes, where I thought we were going to have a UGA moment, and I was like, "Damn it, here they come! Here's what they're doing. They're gonna win this game." And it was just Ole Miss receivers finding those small pockets of the field, those small spaces in the zone to catch balls, and then to make some really, really miraculous and amazing catches. Like, again, what could you do as a defender? You were on them. There were very, very few yak yards, so it wasn't like they were catching the ball and then breaking tackles. Miami was there. There were a lot of hats on head. So did Miami secondary play perfect? No, but they played really well. Again, other than the fourth quarter, those last two drives. I mean, you look at the last three drives of Ole Miss, there were 6 catches of 15 yards or more. I mean, that leads me to believe and leads me to this one point I've been thinking about, which is Miami doesn't play well. When I was talking about earlier, we weren't doing what we were supposed to do, and that we basically were playing ourselves. When Miami plays a prevent style defense, it never works out. It never works out. I don't know what it is, whether it's just because we leave too much space open, and when you have an offense that's basically catered to that in Ole Miss, but those last 3 drives really gave everyone who wears orange and green palpitations and brought a lot of hope to Ole Miss fans. And so I thought, they played really well in those things. And then lastly, Ole Miss or Miami, excuse me, could Miami contain Trinidad Chambliss? So we have a check on Kewan Lacey, making him ineffective, a check on, limiting the wide receivers and not allowing them to get a ton of touchdowns, because I think they only had, one receiving touchdown, right? Could we contain Trinidad Chambliss? And no. The answer was no. I mean, the guy balled out. He was 23 for 37, 277 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 picks, 0 turnovers. The guy was, again, and then he, even despite the 1 sack, he got the 13 yard, he still managed to get 7+ rushing yards. So, I mean, you don't stop a player like that. And so I'm not mad at Miami. I don't think, it's not like we didn't do our job. It's just certain players are going to get theirs, and you have to be okay with that and then shut down the other avenues. And I think that's exactly what we did. I think that's how we were able to get there. I mean, you look at, even the game went down literally to the final play with that Hail Mary to the end zone, with zeros on the clock. So, hats off to Trinidad Chambliss. I thought he was who we thought he was, and he is a baller. That guy does not play games. As for Ole Miss, they had some things that they had to figure out, and clearly by the score, they did not. The first one being, could they contain Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor? Statistically, yes, because we only got 1 tackle for a loss and 1 sack. However, both of those equaled negative 26 yards. And then on top of that, just constant pressure on Trinidad Chambliss. And like I was saying in the preview, you don't necessarily need to get to him, but you need to have him make mistakes, and you need to get him out of his game. And I think we did that. There were several plays where Trinidad Chambliss had a wide open receiver down the field, but because there was so much pressure on him, he had to throw to his check down to get rid of the ball, or he had to throw it out of bounds. And there were even more plays where he was dipping out of the pocket, and then because he was running for his life, was unable to make an accurate throw, which is how you get those 2 for 10 third down conversions. So sadly, they did not get that, fail on that. The next thing is, could Ole Miss stifle or stop Miami rushing? No. Mark Fletcher alone, 22 carries for 133 yards. He had that 19-yard breakaway run. No, they just could not stop Miami's rushing attack. 191 yards overall as a group, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Marty Brown, just a beast, carrying the entire Ole Miss defense 15 yards on one carry. I mean, yes, I know UM's O-line was pushing it too, but I mean, that has just been a staple all season. Hitting the first point of contact, but then pushing that pile 7, 10, 12 yards down the field. We're used to that, and that's exactly what happened. So, no, they were not able to stop, and especially in the first half, the Canes running for 72 yards. I said we needed to get at least 60 to 65 yards. The first half, check, got that. I said Mark Fletcher needs to average 4.5 yards. Check. He did that. Marty Brown also averaged 3.5 yards a carry in that first half. So check and check. But for us, a major and massive failure for Ole Miss, which is what led to them not having the time of possession that they needed. The last and most obvious thing was, could they stop and contain Malachi Toney? And simply put, no. Malachi Toney was Malachi Toney. Baby Jesus was doing baby Jesus and showing up in clutch moments. 2 rushes for 11 yards. Then he had 5 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown off that sick screen where he just split those 2 defenders and got past them. I have no idea. When I saw him cut inside, I was like, oh man, what are we doing? And then broke out of that for that touchdown. Insane. I mean, that 36-yard touchdown was, and to go ahead, I thought that was the game. We thought that was the game. But we're going to talk about the game. Let's talk about that final drive. Let's talk about this polarizing figure that so many people in the media, so many people around the country hate. And listen, if there's one thing us fans love, it is unbridled hate. Give it to me. I am fueled by your hatred. And so is Carson Beck, because that man, yes, he only threw for 62%, but going 23 for 37, 268 yards, and a touchdown with his feet. And we've got to talk about that final drive. The final drive, stuff of legends. I mean, you want to talk, I know, and I get it. I 100% get it. Fernando Mendoza has the quintessential, Hollywood story, guy who's overlooked by his hometown team. Mom went to the college. Now he's in the finals playing them. But let me tell you something. If the championship games goes the way I think it's going to go, listen, the Carson Beck story writes itself. This guy is ran out of, the Bible talks about, a prophet has no power in his own village. I mean, that's basically what happened to Carson Beck. Man got ran out of Athens. They didn't appreciate him. They got left at home. Did not get to see us in the semifinals. Idiots. That's what I always think of, that scene with Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers. It's just like, idiots. And that's what I think Georgia fans and Georgia is. They're idiots for letting Carson Beck go. That guy was incredible throughout the whole game for the most part. I mean, yes, he had that interception, but that was, deflected at the line of scrimmage. And what can you do once a ball is batted? But that final drive was just the stuff of legend. I'm just like looking over it really quick, see if I missed anything, but just picture perfect passes, right? There was a few incompletions, but threading the needle, getting it in there, especially in those quick in dig routes that he was just able to find his receivers on. And again, give it to the wide receiver room. It doesn't always have to be Malachi Toney, whether it's Keelan Marion, whether it's CJ Daniels. These guys play for each other, and they play for the U. It's not about stats. It's not about, getting their numbers up in the box score. It's about let's go get this dub and let's get to the next level. Let's get 1-0. And that final drive where Carson Beck, they get to I think it was the 2-yard line, 3-yard line, and they go for a throw play, and the second the play is height, and I just see Carson Beck drop back. I'm like, sweet baby Jesus, sweet baby Jesus, what are you doing, Mario? You are adding to your lore, and I don't mean that in a nice way. But on that last play, you have Mario just throwing the ball, adding to the lore, not in a good way. and he drops back, and then he just dips. And as he's running into the end zone, the elation just, it was like 20 years just flashed inside of my, like just right in front of my face. And I could not believe we were going to the Natty. Yes, Trinidad Chambliss had an answer. He drove down the field, tried to get that last Hail Mary play, but what a final drive. That is why you pay Carson Beck what you pay him for that drive alone. He protected the ball for the most part in this game. He made very crucial decisions. I love Carson Beck. I can't wait to see what he's going to do. I think he's going to win a natty. But, you know, like I was saying earlier, Miami did not just play the Rebels. They played the refs. This team that wears black and white stripes. The officiating, horrific. It was horrific in the Ohio State game. There were several calls of holding that were completely missed. I didn't want to talk about it because I don't like talking about it because I thought we played stellar. But in this game where we played ugly, holy crap. Ole Miss was literally just bear hugging Ruben Bain and Hakeem Mesidor. Several pass interference calls that could have been called that were completely omitted. And then we've got to talk about the targeting, right? Not understanding what targeting is. I don't think anyone can truly explain it. It means one thing on one play, another thing on another play. And we had a great example of it in this game where you have Malachi Tony clearly getting hit in the head with the crown of the defender not being called. Then a few quarters later, you have Xavier Lucas making a very clean hit on the defense, getting ejected and called for targeting. Doesn't make any sense. It affects the game, but it also affects subsequent games. Like, I think we need to find some sort of appeal process, or there needs to be a further review to uphold the suspension. I get the in-game suspension. Okay, it's a bang bang. It's going to happen. We're going to keep that going. But in terms of like affecting future games, no, there's got to be a review. There's got to be a post-game review and an appeal process that we've got to go through, because no one can define targeting, and it looks different on every call. And we had it in this game. Then there's also the pass interference that everyone's talking about right now. Not hearing a lot of Ole Miss fans, only crazy ones talking about it. A lot of randos bringing up the fact that they thought Ethan O'Connor got away with a pass interference call against Deshaun Stribling. I don't think so, because when you go back and you watch that play around the 1 yard line, Deshaun Stribling is basically just putting his fist into Ethan O'Connor's face. And so Ethan O'Connor, decided to, pay back the act and was like, hey, look, we can play this. And the refs let them play. And I think in a game like this, you have to. I think it was clean. I don't think it's a non-issue. But, the targeting, the missed holds, the missed pass interferences against Miami. Again, Miami got called for 10 penalties for 74 yards. Ole Miss only got called for 30 yards. You can clearly see there was a little bit of favoritism in this. Maybe it was because, we beat Ohio State the week before and this was a Big Ten crew. I don't know. They're probably a little butthurt that their juggernaut got kicked out by us. We manhandled them, but we also manhandled Ole Miss. Like I said, if Miami wasn't playing 3 opponents that night and Ole Miss, the refs, and themselves, this would have been a blowout win. This would have been a blowout win. It would not have been close. So Miami is 3-0 in the semifinals. They beat themselves, they beat the Rebels, and they beat the refs. Last thing I want to talk about, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree with me on this point, can we please redeem this sport that we love so much? Can we please get a little bit more football with our commercials? Because the commercial breaks were egregious. It took me out of the game at several points. I like to sit down during commercial breaks because they usually are about 2 or 3 minutes long. And it felt like I was in a Catholic mass. It was like up and down, and we're up and we're down. It was like one play, commercial. The ball moves, commercial. The sticks move, commercial. The ref blows a whistle, commercial. Every time it felt like that Parks and Rec straight to jail. You go straight to jail skit. Like, it was like the ball moves, straight to jail. Person cheers, straight to jail. Guy goes to get popcorn at the concession, straight to jail. Like, every time it was just constantly going to a commercial. And again, I'm not sure if that had any effect on the game, but it made the game feel way longer. I mean, the game felt like a 4.5, 5-hour affair when you factor in the commercial breaks. And I would just really like to see us get this game under control and make it a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more fun for the people in attendance, and just limit it. You know what? 3 commercials a quarter. and you can jack up the prices as high as you want, and because there's a limited demand, there's a limited supply. You can make that demand go up real fast, right? Especially in the CFP. So please, NCAA, CFP committee, whoever makes these rules, can we please limit these commercial breaks because they are out of control. It is nauseating how many times we're stopping. Anyways, that is the semifinal recap. We are done. We have one more game in this season. I am so glad it is not only the last game for the college football season, but we are involved in it, guys. We have made it to the end of another video, guys. Be good, y'all. Win the week. We will have our preview against Indiana either Friday or this weekend. And as always, go Canes.